Welcome to the Health Revolution, the show that leads you to a life of vibrant well-being. In a world full of noisy health trends, we bring you clarity through a sea of fads. We reveal the science behind the strategies that truly work. We explore physical strength, emotional resilience, and mental mastery, the keys to an enriched life. See inspiring interviews with the champions who've conquered life's health challenges. Are you ready to unlock your potential to live with vitality and purpose? Then join the Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, health and fitness expert, speaker, and a mom who understands. Let's embark on this transformative quest together. If you want to change the game, it all starts now. Welcome, everybody. You are watching the Health Revolution, and we're excited that you're joining us today. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison. No matter which way you're tuning into us, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button. We want to stay connected to you. And also at the bottom of your screen, there is a tab for show episode notes. We want to bring that to your attention as well because there's some important information about today's episode. We want to give a big shout out to all returning viewers, and for new viewers, thank you for joining us today. Our goal here on the Health Revolution is to talk about all things elevating the physical strength of the human body, the emotional resilience, and the mental mastery. Without those three key features, we cannot live and lead an optimal life. And today I'm excited about talking about our topic. We are diving into why our metabolism is failing us. Oftentimes we know that as we get older, we do struggle with being able to maintain weight, drop body fat, body composition is changing. You might notice a few things with your body that may not be something that is easily understood. So we're going to unpack all of that, and we're going to talk about the tie-in to sugar, but beyond that, what's going on in our bodies as we're moving, and the right steps we need to take so that we can improve on our health and any health challenges that we're facing today. Our guest today is someone who I'm excited to talk to and for you to get to know, because he does a deep dive into things that we are not really focusing on until today. First, watch this. Take a look at this. Meet Chris Mearns, a trailblazer in the metabolic health space and the founder of Live3 Health. He's on a mission to rewire how we think about energy, cravings, and fat gain by exposing the overlooked switch that's been hijacking our metabolism, which is fructose. With deep roots in clinical research, human trials, and personal transformation, Chris is flipping the script on what it really takes to regain control of your body and restore your energy. His fructose model is shaking up the conversation and helping people finally get unstuck. Today, we will learn how this hidden trigger may be the missing link in your fatigue, cravings, and stubborn fat, and how to turn it off. Chris Mearns, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I want to dive right into it. So let's take it to the beginning. What was the turning point for you in doing this deeper dive and understanding health, but really taking the path that you're on right now?
It was totally unintentional. Basically, I had a daughter, and as that kind of happens, then we start thinking about, well, I got to make sure I'm healthy for her as I was getting older, like starting to hit my 40s and stuff like that. And so I started reading some books and stumbled into kind of a biohacking-ish space. And it ended up opening up a really big rabbit hole of just deeper and deeper into reading scientific literature and stuff like that. I have a bit of a background in supplements, but we had put that aside for a number of years and focused on other things. So it was really interesting to start to see something somewhat uncovered about root cause issues. And it's fascinating to kind of start to see all of that bubble up. And I put it aside because it didn't seem actionable at the time. It was like all these cool things were being unraveled, but there wasn't anything I could necessarily do about it other than taking like vitamin C and the things that we appreciate that way. But a couple of years later, things started to open up more as I started stumbling across more research that made this actionable and made it turn into a bigger conversation. So Yeah.
Now, can you explain to our audience what biohacking is for those who don't understand?
Sure. Essentially, the way I see everyone has a different definition, and sometimes people think, okay, you can kind of like modify your body to a significant degree and it becomes obsessive. But I actually think it's the opposite. I think it's essentially it follows this model of instead of treating disease, you figure out how to prevent it so that you can maintain a good level of health in the sense of health span for longer. So it's like the little things that you do that are kind of following where the science is going, as opposed to the proven pharmaceutical kind of thing. There's so much that's kind of on being explored, and there's reason to believe that maybe this will move the needle. And if you look at it from a preventative standpoint, then hopefully you can live a longer, healthier life. So.
Now, your background isn't in the traditional medical space. Can you talk a little bit about what also led you professionally to really take a step back and now do the deeper dives that you are doing with health and with how we can improve on our health?
Yeah, I don't come from the medical space. Like my family has really deep roots in supplements, but it's funny because supplements they often don't move the needle enough. It's like you're adding something that you may be deficient in, and that's a great thing. But it doesn't always result in like completely better health. It's not major transformation most of the time, unlike pharmaceuticals, which do have more significant intervention. So in a way, it was kind of like, okay, well, that's interesting. But my own background was more separate to that. I've been involved in user research for a very long time. In fact, doing like user research on VR headsets and stuff like that as those were being prototyped. So my thinking is very much high level, holistic, and trying to find like something that is useful to the human experience. And so coming from that and now exploring metabolic health, I couldn't help but sort of try to have that uh, 1,000-foot view of what's going on. And what was amazing is I take no credit, but I started stumbling upon things that did seem to resolve a lot that we've wondered about for many decades. So,
So we are on a really poor trajectory right now
yeah.
here in the States. Globally, our health is we're facing rates of obesity that are climbing. Here in the U.S., I think the latest number said, as of today, 45% of the U.S. adult population being obese, and obviously metabolic health is playing a role. Talk us through where to start. Where have you noticed, where are we getting it wrong?
Um, Very simply, what I've come to believe is that we are treating symptoms. Even the worst of chronic diseases that we're seeing, cancer, Alzheimer's, I believe that it is a symptom of a deeper disease. And that deeper disease really being a failure of cellular energy. Because if you look, all of those different chronic diseases, the four major types, whether it's metabolic, cognitive, cardiovascular, or neurodegenerative, all of them hold commonalities. And it's a really interesting set of commonalities. It's things like insulin resistance, it's things like inflammation, low cellular energy. There's a host of them that produce kind of a signature that's common. And so logic should tell us, well, maybe there is a reason why they all manifest these things.
And where would you say things started to take a turn? Because if we look in the last century, obviously a lot has happened in every single decade, and we're just gaining in changes. Where would you say things took a significant turn with our health and everything that you just mentioned?
There is a really interesting socioeconomic lens on this. If you go back to the 1850s and even earlier, I'm sure you weren't expecting this conversation, but the East India Trading Company started collapsing as it was using it was providing sugar to the world, essentially. And what happened in the 1850s is that tariffs changed to allow all sorts of different companies to start importing sugar, and it made it cheap. It was introduced at the World's Fair in 1851 in London, and then suddenly sugar became a common part of our diet. And it's really interesting to watch on a graph how it really shows as a leading indicator of the decline of metabolic health. Basically, as we started adding sugar into our diet, we started seeing climbing rates of obesity. Eventually, it turned into diabetes and so much more. And over the last century, things got even crazier. Back in the early turn of the century, I think it was like in the 20s or so, like 100 years ago, the Piggly Wiggly started up, where we started having supermarkets, and the way that we started consuming food changed significantly, where suddenly you could have anything you wanted, and processed foods started climbing in there, and then more and more that started getting added with sugar and salt and high caloric foods, and then we threw high fructose corn syrup at it. So it was like basically I believe we kind of manufactured our own demise in a way because we could. It's like, this tastes delicious, and every single animal on the planet likes to eat it, and we'll get probably into why. But because we could, we did. And now we're kind of dealing with the consequences of completely modifying our diet.
So would you say that I always thought that it was the spike in once fast foods or the fast food industry was introduced that things really took off. But you're saying even before then there was we were on that path.
I think those were accelerants, but essentially, like if you look back hundreds and hundreds of years ago, like gout was the disease of the rich and the wealthy, right? The kings, and it was, I believe, a bit of a preview of what we're seeing now, where those were the only people that could really afford the excesses. They drank a lot, they ate all sorts of foods, and they could have the sugar. And essentially, it's just mirrored what we see now. So as we started piling on all of these excesses into our life, it kind of just gave us access to more and more of what was going to hurt us on a very deep cellular level.
So then the type of health conditions that we're facing today, where was there a secondary turning point? So obviously the convenience of some of these items that were not available before, but was there a turning point where there was a huge health change? Because I asked this in a way that I guess it seems as though in recent decades we're noticing some alarming health conditions that were not present 100 years ago. What's your take on that?
I believe it's the entire change in our food system. So especially in the 1960s and 70s, when we started adding high fructose corn syrup and a lot of processed foods, like even what was in the supermarket started to shift, where suddenly you have all this access to cheap high caloric foods. And I believe, unfortunately, the reality is that it's also kind of inverse effect what we saw before, where it was the wealthy that could only afford these things, and now it's only the poor that can afford these things. Where unfortunately, minority groups are especially targeted by these things because that's just where our cheapest food might happen to be. And it's really sad to see that. But in the meantime, like, we have to go to the outsides of our supermarkets and eat the whole foods, where we start to have a little bit more of a mirrored diet that what we used to have once upon a time.
About cellular energy, the breakdown of overall cellular function. What is it that we don't know about our bodies at the cellular level? Where do we start?
Okay, so effectively, what is happening is sugar itself is made up of glucose and fructose. And glucose we've focused on for many years. It is our body's fuel. Our brains need it to run. Every cell in our body uses glucose. But to take perhaps an analogy of a car, if your car isn't performing well, you don't say I must have too much gas in the tank. Like it doesn't hold logic. So in spite of our focus on high caloric foods, the calorie model, the insulin model, and all these different models that we've used to explain metabolic health, I believe that all of those things have kind of missed a very, very big elephant in the room, and that being fructose. Because the other half of the sugar molecule, sucrose, is fructose. And because it didn't really act as a fuel, it very subtly spikes insulin. It's not really that fuel. We've kind of, in large part, ignored it until the last probably 10 years or so, where the research has really shown that it's having a dramatic effect on our cells in a way that we didn't expect.
So fructose is the culprit, or fructose is the one that's in the spotlight.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so what's happening as the standard American diet, or for that type of food intake where we're not being mindful of our eating. So what's happening to our bodies at the cellular level as you understand it?
Okay, so when your body encounters fructose, if it gets past your gut can handle roughly 6 or 7 grams in an hour without it passing through to your liver. But once it hits your liver, what happens is it rapidly depletes your ATP. Your ATP is your cellular energy, and so basically, it sucks all the energy out of your cell. And not only then, but it transforms that ATP, which you can kind of visualize as little batteries. It's a triphosphate, and then it depletes to a duophosphate, to a monophosphate. It was like a little battery, and they can be recharged. But when you deplete them using this process, they actually degrade into uric acid. And uric acid is completely different. It can't be recharged. And now it's more, uric acid then starts to cause stress on our mitochondria. And our mitochondria are what turn glucose, the fuel, into energy, ATP. And so effectively, it's like burning out the engines in our cells. It's switching them into a lower performance mode. And so our cells now, not only do they lose all that ATP they had, but now they can't make more. They become very slow. And what's even crazier is that a slow, energy drained cell sends a signal to our body that we're starving. And so, of course, our response is to go and eat more. If we can eat more, we end up eating more sugar, and it becomes a loop that's extremely problematic, because it just makes our cellular energy worse and worse and worse over time.
So then when that happens over time, what potential risks is that connected to on the long?
Effectively, all risk, because if you think about it, let's go back to this idea of a car. If if your car's engine isn't running well, then you hit the gas and nothing happens. You feel it's tired. It's like the RPMs only bump a little bit. It doesn't really do much. That's fine for you. But if you're thinking about it in this terms of like systems, like say the postal service, if a single truck has that issue, that's no problem. But if the entire fleet of postal trucks have the same engine problem, then suddenly the mail doesn't run. And so, as our cells are part of these systems where we're weakest will be the ones that fail first. So, if it's our endothelial cells, then suddenly we get hypertension. Or if it's our liver, which is, of course, the first target, then we start gaining liver fat. And we start getting. So, basically, whether it's cancer, whether it's neurodegeneration, because this is a common signal across all these different systems, it makes sense as to why we start to see disease emerge out of these states. Fragile cells lead to fragile systems, and that leads to disease.
We have so much more to cover. This is extremely fascinating. First, we're going to take a commercial break. Stay right there. We're coming back.
So in the calm bag, it has GABA, theanine, and taurine. So theanine, which is B1, which is also in our B complex, but it also helps with the stress response levels. It also helps with the neurological transmitters in our brain. Combined with the GABA, and then you add taurine to it. Taurine is a non-essential amino acid in our body, but it's found in our heart, our brain, and our eyes. So in my personal opinion, it's very essential in our lives. But taurine has a calming effect as well. When I was battling all my AFib issues, I was taking high doses of taurine because that would help with my AFib. It would help with the palpitations I was having. And it also helped with the anxiety of having the palpitations because I knew what was going on, and so taurine helps a lot with that as well. So those three together create such a wonderful concoction that just really just calms people down.
Introducing Launchpad, the perfect partner to help you launch your dream project to the world. We know that time is of the essence, and we're here to help you make the most of it. With Launchpad, you'll get access to the most advanced digital tools and strategies to take your idea from a mere concept to a fully fledged success. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned pro, we have everything you need to make your mark in the world. Launchpad, your ultimate launch partner.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're talking about why your metabolism is failing you. And our guest today, Chris Mearns, he is the founder of Live 3 Health. We are diving into the basics and understanding how our body is responding to the type of foods that we're eating, the general eating patterns, how all of this plays a role in our overall health. And Chris, before the break, you were going over so eloquently the breakdown of how our bodies are addressing fructose. And you talked about that flip that fructose makes. And I'm curious, a lot of women, especially getting older in perimenopause and menopause, they talk about how things are different. They feel like their bodies are betraying them. And listen, I'm right in that space as well. Could this be part of or a huge explanation as to what's going on in our bodies as we're dealing with menopause?
Unfortunately, I do believe that's true because on a cellular level, that is really how our bodies produce hormones. It's essentially signaling between our cells, right? So when you have a poor energy cell, it starts to affect very quickly chronic inflammation. It starts to affect hormones. It starts to affect so many different things because it makes a lot of logical sense. If it's just running in low performance mode, then some of those things are going to happen. But I actually believe that there is a survival mechanism that's driving this. And I don't want to villainize fructose. I actually think it's really important for us to appreciate that it has a beneficial purpose. And with that lens, a lot of what we see with chronic health issues, it starts to make a lot of sense. I mean, maybe I can give an example. Uh, PCOS is a major issue for so many women, and it seems to always be synonymous with insulin resistance. So there is something happening under the hood that is causing this to happen that is related to our metabolic health. And if you look at it from the perspective of a survival mechanism, you might ask the question, why would the body be trying to protect, why would the body try to prevent pregnancy? And you can take a lesson from animals, in fact. Like a bear is a fascinating one because it will not implant an embryo unless it has enough fat stores to survive hibernation. So it actually is protecting the bear from a risky pregnancy. And from that lens, it starts to make sense as to why this might be the case. If we're having troubles with our metabolic health, then it makes sense that our body is trying to prevent it from doing something that could be risky. So as an example, it seems that this is a very, very deep mechanism that is very intentional in how it behaves.
Can we talk about the fructose model? Can you break down the framework and the foundation? Explain the fructose model for us?
So effectively, what seems to be happening is with low energy cells, our bodies get stuck in a pattern of problem where we know inflammation is important in short term, but once it's locked in, it becomes problematic. We know that some various hormones are actually very important. Like, for example, insulin resistance, I actually believe that it has a purposeful intent initially. For example, if it's blocking, its job is to block excess fuel from entering your cell. So you have to ask the question of why would it do that? Well, if the cell can't convert that fuel into energy, then what would be happening is we would be inserting extra oxidative stress into our cells. That glucose would just build up in the same way that you'd flood an engine. So all of these different little signals that we see are essentially something adaptive that's become maladaptive across the board. And so we have to really examine what is causing our cells' energy to fail. And it's not just fructose. I just believe that fructose is the singular major player that is everyone's problem. But viral infections, obviously, they steal energy from your cell, like long COVID. It makes sense why they start manifesting some metabolic symptoms. Lyme disease steals energy from your cell, so it makes sense why they can start mimicking some metabolic symptoms. Even a lot of different drugs can do that in their intent to do something good for us. So, really, what I believe is that at a very base level, fundamental level, it's that cellular energy failure that's kind of cracking the foundation of our health. And so everything that piles on top of it is almost a symptomatic display of what's happening there. And for that reason, it doesn't actually invalidate any of the ideas that have come before, whether it's our medications, whether it's trying to get good sleep, good exercise, eat healthy, all of that stuff. It's so important. But this is going a level deeper and saying that we're cracking the foundation essentially with our poor diets that we have today.
How long have we known about this being something that needs more of our attention? Has this come up in more recent decades? Has this always been there and it just hasn't had the proper spotlight? Why aren't we talking about this more?
That's the question I really want to answer because it is. We've had pieces of the puzzle for a long time, but there is a very big piece of the puzzle that we only caught in the last couple years, and that is that our bodies make fructose, like significant amounts. So, and what's really crazy about it is the ways that it makes fructose unifies a lot of what we thought about our health, like the things that are causing us issues. So, high glycemic carbs cause our bodies to make fructose. Basically, anytime our glucose levels are raised, our bodies become fructose making machines. And so suddenly you can't just look at sugar; you have to look at pasta and fries and all that kind of thing, or all those carbs that we're eating. The other side of it is that salt is another big one because salt and dehydration cause our bodies to believe that we're experiencing a bit of a lack of water. So And then the other one is alcohol and stress of different kinds, hypoxia, for example. So when we're snoring, we actually, or when we get sleep apnea, when we have a lack of oxygen, again, that is again a scarcity of resources. And so that's why not only does this kind of reframe all these different ideas that we've had of things that are making us unwell, but it unifies them all as being fructose at their root. And it also helps us to see that all the different players in our diet actually do matter to a significant degree.
So with doctors that are, and I'm going to throw it out there that this conversation keeps evolving. What makes it hard why hasn't this gained more traction? So even right now, as we're talking about this, it's not something that doctors will talk about, or it's not something that's naturally come up. Where are you seeing, where are the obstacles in these conversations?
I think that this is just a personal opinion, but I think that probably the main reason that we haven't heard of this yet is because there wasn't really anything actionable to do. I mean, like from what we're talking about here, okay, so um, carbs, alcohol, high salty foods, like we've known all of this stuff for decades. We know, like you ask any kid and you say like, what food does your parents say you shouldn't eat too much of? And all of them will say sugar. It's just we know this stuff, and so we're not measurably moving the needle anyway. And really, that's the trouble I ran into a few years ago when I started reading about this. Is like this is really fascinating, but what am I going to do about it? Take more vitamin C because that'll help kind of protect the oxidative stress in my cells. How do you stop fructose without really radical restrictive diets? And that is really, I think, the main problem here. But what's interesting is that pharma companies are exploring this. They are finding ways to stop fructose from insulting your cells by modifying or by influencing the enzyme that's used for its metabolism. And it was when I started to stumble across natural compounds that do exactly that, that suddenly the whole conversation opened up and was like, wait a second, maybe this is actually actionable now.
And let's talk about that, because I know that you just mentioned what am I going to do with this? And so this is the basis behind Live 3 Health. Talk about how it got started, the overall mission, and I want to talk about what are some cool things behind Live 3 Health.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe the story of how that kind of came into being is important because like there is a particular enzyme that is required for this whole cascade to happen. So to convert the ATP into uric acid, what happens is that fructose is metabolized by an enzyme called fructokinase, otherwise known as ketohexokinase C or KHKC. And this is the whole system hangs on this because not only does it affect dietary sugar and fructose, but it also affects the ways that the body produces fructose. It basically says no matter where this fructose is coming from, this is the key, this is the pathway. And so what's interesting is that there is a group of people that have a rare genetic condition that's completely benign called essential fructosuria. And what it means is it's what it sounds like. It's your body pees out the fructose. So they lack this enzyme and they don't know it because they just live healthy. It's not until this shows up on a blood test that they even realize that they have this condition. But what's interesting is that none of these people have ever been documented to have any features of metabolic syndrome. They live very healthy. So it's almost like they found for us this linchpin of the whole thing. And so if we're able to modify or influence that enzyme, then hopefully we can protect our cells from the influence of fructose. And so that's really the lens that a lot of pharma companies are looking at. They're investing millions into trying to find a small molecule that will actually lower the activity of that enzyme. And essentially, that's what we kind of stumbled upon as a natural substance. There's other ways that we can do that naturally without having to rely on or even wait 10 years or more for pharma to kind of show what this is going to do for us.
And I want to share with our audience, obviously, a component of Live 3 Health. And so we do have a slide here that I'd like to bring up here. Talk a little bit about Sugar Shield and the makings. I do have my own here for as my version of show and tell. But talk a little bit about Sugar Shield and what is to be expected of that.
For sure. So Sugar Shield is made of two ingredients, luteolin and tart cherry extract. And luteolin is a polyphenol. So maybe some of your viewers have heard of quercetin. It's very closely related to quercetin. But what it does is it has a very special, unique ability of inhibiting fructokinase. So that's the reason that we really focused on it. And because luteolin is quite poorly bioavailable, really we could only do this recently when we started using liposomes with some of our different supplements that we're using. So that protects it from the gut and allows it to pass into the bloodstream where it can do its good stuff. So essentially, that's what we have here. It's a very high dose liposomal luteolin that allows the body to buffer some of the effects of fructose. The reason we include tart cherry is because tart cherry helps with the uric acid byproduct of fructose. So as our bodies, like the way that they kind of crush the health of our mitochondria is by generating uric acid. And so we can stop the fructose, but unless we kind of clear out that mess that's been made, then we're not going to feel the dramatic benefit of our energy and reducing in cravings and stuff like that. So really that's what we've created here.
So then this will, when you say clearing out the system, then that's the goal, to make sure that the excess doesn't enter our bloodstream or doesn't hinder our cells. So it's almost like it stops it at that point.
That's the hope. Yeah, exactly. So basically, like luteolin, there's been some clinical studies on it. There was one nutraceutical company, we're not related to them, but they actually found that a dose of luteolin, in this case, it wasn't as high as ours and it's not liposomal, but they actually found that it reduced insulin resistance numbers by 43% in 6 months. So again, and similar, like some of the pharmaceutical KHK inhibitors that they're working on, they found that it reduced insulin resistance by a whole pile like that. It also reduced liver fat by in the range of like 22%, or maybe it was 27%, I believe it was. And so like it's kind of showing that this is doing a measurable thing to the foundation level of what we're trying to accomplish here. Because most people, like the best researchers today, are saying insulin resistance is the problem. But I believe that's kind of a fallacy. I think we need to go deeper than that. It's sort of like back to that car analogy. If insulin resistance is trying to deliver fuel to your cells, then it's sort of like saying, I'm hitting the gas in my car and it's not working, so there must be something wrong with my gas pedal. And instead, we have to like pop the hood and see what's going on underneath it. And really, I think that's what's happening here is like, if we stop fructose and its influence on our cells, then maybe it's like hitting the eco mode button on our car and turning that off so that suddenly we can have the performance that we're expecting out of our body again.
I want to show the second slide to our viewing audience. And again, I have Sugar Shield in my hands. Now, would this go hand in hand with improving food choices? Is the intentionality of no matter what you eat, this will help to block it? Or do we have to is it clear that we're going to try and make some food choices while we're implementing this?
That's a good question. So this will protect your cells, which is great. So if you're eating food that is causing your body to create fructose, So if you're having alcohol, if you're enjoying a big bowl of pasta or something like that, then even if you're not eating sugar, your body will end up converting some of that glucose into fructose, and your body will have harm there. So this is not a pharmaceutical in the sense that it blocks all that activity entirely. In fact, there could be a little bit of problems that could emerge, and I think that might be why pharma is slow to the to the story here. Is they're trying to figure out. I think their initial fructokinase inhibitors worked too well, and suddenly it started to cause some issues. But because this is natural, it just basically buffers the ability of your body to process fructose, which allows us to still eliminate it in a healthy way. So what I'm saying here is it really complements good dietary choices. It allows us to kind of, the reason that our company is named Live Health is this idea that health has consumed so much of our life for the past so many decades that even just when we're chatting with friends, that's where the conversation goes eventually. The idea here is that hopefully we can get away from that a little bit and just be able to enjoy the foods that we have and hopefully not have them hurt us as much. But one other thing is that as our bodies get insulted by fructose, it creates that emergency signal and that we're starving, and that's why we end up having cravings. And so if we turn that off, then what's really cool is that we start gaining agency over our choices. In fact, a lot of people report that after they take Sugar Shield after a while, their taste actually changes, where sweet foods almost can become too sweet. And like a piece of fruit is like the most amazing thing in the world, because it's like it's hitting that exact natural sweetness that we're hoping to have. So it's really amazing how like many people, they end up losing weight just because they eat less. They aren't driven to eat and snack at night anymore, and it just kind of gives freedom so that we can just enjoy the food that we have and kind of be moderate in the way that we hope to.
We've got a lot more to cover. Sugar Shield is what we were talking about right now. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We're coming right back. Stay still.
Welcome to Renew Laser and Skincare, where beauty meets technology. From laser hair removal and anti-aging treatments to facial sculpting, acne care, and injectables, our expert team helps you look and feel your best with customized, results-driven care. Located in Littleton, Colorado, we offer a comfortable, welcoming space and cutting-edge treatments tailored just for you. Visit renewlaserandskincare.com to book your transformation today. Renew Laser and Skincare, where confidence begins.
Hi, I'm Adriana, and welcome to Fit Bites. Today, let's talk about colon cancer screening. It's an essential step in protecting your health. Now, colon cancer is one of the most common cancers, but it's also highly preventable and treatable if caught early. Screening typically starts at age 45 or earlier if you have a family history of colon cancer or other risk factors. A colonoscopy is the gold standard for screening, as it can detect precancerous polyps before they develop into cancer. Non-invasive options like stool tests are also available if a colonoscopy isn't right for you. The best part? Early detection saves lives. Colon cancer often develops without symptoms, so regular screening is key, even if you feel fine. Take control of your health by scheduling your screening and talking to your doctor about your risk factors. It's a simple step that could make all the difference in your future. Stay proactive, stay informed, and stay tuned for more Fit Bites with Adriana. Welcome back, everybody. My guest today, Chris Mearns, he is the founder of Live Health, and we have been talking about some of the different ways in which we can combat the issue with fructose and how we can harness it to be helpful to us, but also addressing what happens when we have that excess in our bodies and it affects our metabolism and the connectedness that it has to health concerns that we are facing in our society. And Chris, I just wanted to ask, what kind of feedback, you started to go into this before we went to the break, what kind of feedback are you getting from those who have been taking it? You mentioned that sweeter objects, sweeter pieces of food taste differently for some. Are there any other noticeable changes or differences that you've heard of or that you've gotten as feedback for those who have taken Sugar Shield?
It's a really broad range of effects because, as we're talking about, like, this is very low level foundational cellular stuff happening. But I'll tell my own experience perhaps. My wife and I started taking it, and about 3 weeks into it, we kind of turned to each other at this like moment where our daughter had gone to bed and was like, "Hey, we should have a drink," and like kind of, and it's like, "Would you want me to make you a cocktail?" And we were kind of like, "No." Like, I don't feel like it. And it was like, it's not that that was weird, but it was like we had agency over that, and it was like we didn't have that craving for it. And we noticed over the next few weeks, we stopped snacking. We maybe had like cereal after dinner at like 9 o'clock or something like that. And those habits kind of dropped away. And then over the next, I'd say 3 months or so, I think I lost close to 25 pounds. Like it allows your body to kind of reset the homeostasis, I think. And I think a really important way to look at this is really that if fructose is switching our cells into eco mode, into a conservation mode, then disabling that switches them back into sport mode. And so it's like a bear, for example, before hibernation will binge on berries because that's his really ripe berries, because that's his method of getting fructose. He bulks on all this weight. He survives 6 months of not eating at all. And then suddenly he's completely normal again. And so it's like we have these systems built into every one of us where we can hopefully turn off that drive. And people are mentioning hormonal changes that they're always appreciative of. They're mentioning weight loss, energy enormously. Like, I remember I woke up like a month later and I felt euphoric. And that never happened before. Like, wake up in the morning and you feel great. So it's because your ATP is now able to work again, suddenly your energy balance improves. I know so many people say they don't take naps in the afternoon anymore. So things like that, it's a very foundational change.
We want to bring up your website. We want to talk about Live Health and talk a little bit about it as viewing audience, as anyone who is interested in hearing more. If they come across your website, what are some things that they can expect, or some things that you have in store for those who are looking for this type of help?
Yeah, for sure. So our website is intended to make this simple because at its root, we're kind of talking about, for lack of a better word, kind of blocking sugar. And that sounds crazy and like snake oil and blah, blah, blah. And so we appreciate that. But what we're actually trying to do here is a pretty foundational change in how our body handles fructose. And that's what Sugar Shield is intended to do. So if you take it with your meals, then it will kind of buffer that signal that's coming from the food that we're eating. But on a deeper level, we do actually believe that this is possibly the root of our metabolic decline. And there's so much evidence from so many different angles that leads up to that. And so we're putting up a set of white papers on here that allows someone to deep dive into the science if they so desire, because this does have a massive web of effects, whether it's towards cancer or Alzheimer's or dementia. We're not saying that it treats those things, but we're saying that a lot of these conditions might emerge out of having too much fructose in our body.
I do want to bring up one other slide for our viewing audience where we do have a QR code. Obviously, you've got your Live Health website on there, and for our viewing audience, if anyone wants to go ahead and grab it, there's a discount code, and using the code Health Revolution. So we have this here. I think it's incredible that you have this, and I just started taking this. I'm not noticing sugar cravings. I will say that I'm pleasantly surprised, because I know that sugar can be such a bear in so many ways for so many people. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We are coming back. You stay right there. Welcome back, everybody. We've been spending quality time with our guest today, Chris Mearns. He's the founder of Live Health. Chris, where can we find you in the virtual space?
Well, you can check out our website, livehealth.com. That's liv3health.com. And yeah, you can check out our product there. And it's funny, I know your show is the Health Revolution. We've actually been talking about a metabolic revolution, because we're so aligned. We want this holistic change to happen with what we're hoping to achieve here. So yeah, that's our website. You can also find us on Instagram, TryLive, and also I am producing a new show called The Fructose Model on YouTube, in order to help kind of get this message out, because the web of effects is so deep. It stretches through insulin resistance and hormones and all sorts of different kinds of cancers and chronic disease. So, well, it's very simple, because our health has gotten so complex over the last many decades. Hopefully this will help to kind of unify a lot of those ideas into something that makes sense.
What is the one final question for you? What is the one takeaway you want our viewers to have?
That it's not your fault, because we are actually following biological programming. The reason that we are eating the way we are is because it's not like there's some villainous sugar conglomerate out there. It's just that we're eating the things that we want to eat. And unfortunately, all that's doing is running the same survival program that every animal out there has. And so the solution, we're not going to expect people to totally radicalize their diets, but something very easy that we can do is take something that will inhibit the enzyme that unlocks that whole thing, so that we can actually start to feel a little bit better and regain the health of our youth. I mean, I do believe that because this is foundational, hopefully it will mean a revolution, in the sense that we'll be able to see an improvement to wellness and resilience and freedom, to the point where hopefully in future generations they won't know about these chronic diseases and all these issues that we have today. That's my hope.
Chris Mearns, founder of Live Health and obviously Sugar Shield. This is incredible. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Thank you for sharing your nuggets. Thank you for being here.
It's a big pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And for all our viewers, we want to just give a quick shout out to our sponsors. We appreciate their support: Biomed Mobile IV, Dapper No Code Launchpad, Renews Laser and Skincare, and Synergize Fitness. We are also on the web. You can find us on thehealthrevolutiontv.com. There you can email us with any show episode ideas you'd love for us to cover. And you can catch our newsletter. Upper corner of your screen, you will find our QR code. And then, of course, you can count on us to be there for you every Tuesday and Thursday on the Arion TV channel and E360 TV and all the distribution handles, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. That is all the time that we have for today. Until next time, take care of yourselves. We will see you soon.